Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started. What's good, Alaska? This is Scott Levesque, and you're listening to the Daily Dose of the Must Read Alaska podcast. First of all, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining with us. And before we get started, today's a special episode, and we'll get all into that. But before we get started, of course, you know my plea and my ask every time we do an episode, and that's if you could take a second and give us a 5-star review, it would be greatly appreciated. We're trying to get to 100 reviews before the end of the year, and we're almost there. We're at 93, and I know a lot of people have been asking, how do I do this? You can go to iTunes. You can go look us up at Must Read Alaska and give us a review right there. And if, hey, I know some of you are like the next step or an extra mile type of person. If you are that, you can go ahead and take another minute and give us a written review. We've read all of the written reviews. They've been overwhelmingly positive, and we just really appreciate our readers, our listeners, and our supporters. Without you guys, this would not happen. And we just want to make sure that we let you know we truly appreciate you. So just take a second, give us a 5-star review. Or if you want to, go ahead and go that extra mile and give us a written review, and we'll make sure we read those. And again, we appreciate all the feedback. It has been overwhelmingly positive. So thank you very much. Well, today is the 100th episode of the podcast. It's a milestone here at Must Read Alaska. This podcast started in August of 2020, and it was the brainchild of John Quick and Suzanne Downing. And I'm writing the coattails as we speak, and it's fun. But we're at the 100th episode, which is a huge milestone. So I asked if Suzanne would be willing to jump on and talk today. And Suzanne, what do you think? 100 episodes?
Well, surely you have something like an applause button or something, cheers or fireworks or something that we can throw in here. Actually, it's been a lot of fun. I've done a lot of growing during this process because podcasting is new to me. And I've done a lot of radio shows and that type of thing. But having your own podcast that's a big responsibility. And when we sort of took it on, I said, look, I don't have a lot of time for this, but it has been the kind of thing I look forward to every week. So, and I really appreciate all you've done to make it possible. You are immensely talented at this. You've got a great radio voice, by the way. And you're always, your podcasts, when you're doing it during the week, are always really interesting. So I'm glad that you suggested that we go from Monday and then we stretch it out for the week. So how many are we kind of hitting every week now? About 4 a week?
Yeah, we're steady on 4. We're trying to make it sure it's 5, but we've hit 4. And listen, the listeners have been overwhelming in this too. I mean, I've shared some of the numbers with you, but October's trending to be our best month ever, and we're almost closing in at 7,500 downloads for the month. So it's just been really, really exciting to see how not only we've grown, but also our audience, which is awesome, because that's what we're here for. We're here to give a full, well-rounded view of the news, not just the liberal narrative, which we get a lot, including some of the stuff we talked about off recording. But what I want to ask you today is Nick Begich had a nice little opener today in the Valley and talked about him running and making this official. And so what I'm really curious about, because you have so much knowledge that you'll forget more than I'll ever know. Tell me a little bit about what you see, kind of the landscape of him making this announcement. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement, but also Don Young has been such a staple here in Alaska. I'd love to hear your kind of analysis of this whole thing.
Well, I am actually pretty excited to see Nick announce, because we are in an era now where we have ranked choice voting. And if you're conservative, you don't want Don Young to be on that ballot with 3 other Democrats or 2 Democrats and an undeclared. If you want a conservative result out of this race, then you've got to have a couple conservatives, because remember, ranked choice voting next November is going to be, who do you pick for your first choice? Who do you pick for your second choice? So Nick Begich gives all Alaskans a choice between Don Young and Nick Begich. And maybe the Democratic Party will put up a candidate. Maybe somebody will show up from the Libertarians. And if they're on the ballot, there'll be 4 people on the ballot next November. You'll get to rank who you want. And at this point in Don Young's life, it's probably good that the conservatives have somebody kind of waiting in the wings. And quite honestly, Nick Begich is making a really strategic move here. If he doesn't win this time, he will become well known all over the state, and he'll win next time. So he's playing his cards right on this. He is a Begich, and of course that takes a little bit of getting used to for those of us who have grown up in Alaska and who are conservative, who've had Democratic Begiches in the news all of our lives. And Scott, he's not the Democratic Begich. He was raised by Republicans. His dad is a libertarian. He has very, very strong kind of libertarian leanings. And he's also a Christian. He lives in Chugiak. He's been involved in Republican Party politics for quite some time. He's on the board of the Alaska Policy Forum. So for Don Young, who is getting up there in years, I believe he's 88 now. He will be 89 next year. And then in 23, he'll be 90. He is not getting any younger. We've got to start, readying the new generation to take over. Like it or not, we all end up the same. We all end up under the ground, right? And so it's great to see a new generation come up. And I've known Nick for a long time. I really believe that he is a genuine person. He's a businessman, got a brilliant business mind, and he's very pro-business, which I think for Alaska, that's important.
Mm-hmm. Well, just that last statement right there, you wrote an article that Alaska is 55 out of 95 when it comes to the ease of starting a business in this city, particularly Anchorage, I believe, too.
Yeah, it was Anchorage.
Yeah. So I think it's great. I agree with you. I think at some point the baton has to be passed. And obviously with Don Young getting up in age and Nick, not just having the experience and the brain. I mean, he's an extremely intelligent dude, but also the fact that he has worked with Don in the past. And so he has that experience. And I think he's a great successor to Don Young. And so I'm really excited about this. I've had the opportunity to meet Nick a couple of times. And I mean, you just think three things: sharp, smart, and going somewhere. And so
going somewhere. Yeah. And so today was his announcement in Wasilla. And so he booked a conference room in a hotel. He told the folks out in Wasilla several months ago, they said, are you going to run? Are you going to run? Because remember, he was the honorary co-chair of the Don Young campaign in 2020, did a great job. He traveled all over the state. And while he was meeting people in the Valley, they were scratching their heads, and the conservatives saying, gee whiz, he's a Begich, but he's conservative. And then finally they started warming up to him. And I'll tell you, his biggest fan base now is in the Mat-Su Valley. They love him out there. And so he promised them that if he did announce, he would do so in the Valley. And that's what he did today.
Well, we always like a guy that keeps his promises, shows good leadership. And well, since we're on the terms of leadership, let's talk a little bit about this Anchorage Assembly meeting last night and what is turning out to be a real like fifth grade fight going on between the Assembly and the Bronson administration. And I have to say the antagonist in this whole thing is the Assembly. They continually are antagonizing the administration. They're antagonizing the general public, particularly those who oppose a lot of the policies and ordinances that they're proposing. And to me, this screams of just really crappy politics. In my view, it's crappy politics.
Yeah, that's a technical term. I'm not sure all of our listeners have heard that one before, but it's always something new here on Must Read Alaska. The Assembly majority, which is the Marxist 9, they call them, they really want to get everybody in masks. And so they passed an ordinance last week. Everybody in the city has to wear masks, no matter, kind of, if you're there are exceptions, of course. And they put a bunch of loopholes in there. For instance, the mayor and his staff, executive staff, don't have to wear masks, but everybody else in the city does. If you have an exemption for a mental or a physical disability, you don't have to wear a mask. And they asked politely, even when they passed this ordinance, please don't go harassing people. If they're not wearing a mask, let them go. So then last night, they passed a rule for their own assembly chambers, which was much more draconian, which was everybody in a mask, 125 people limit in the room for assembly meetings, and stay 6 feet apart, that type of thing. So they are implementing new rules for the assembly that require people to wear masks with no exemptions. And then they looked to the mayor's office, and Amy Demboski was there as the city manager, sitting in for the mayor who's been quarantined because he was exposed to COVID. And they wanted her to enforce that. They wanted her to use the police force and the security force of the city to enforce their rule, which is more draconian than the ordinance that they passed last week, which had a lot of loopholes. Meg Zaletel, she just basically said, there will be no exemptions. There are no exemptions for this one. In this room, there are no exemptions. If you can't wear a mask, if you can't wear a face shield, you just watch from home or you call in on the phone. But so they basically, their own rule for their meeting, they're trying to override the ordinance they passed last week and make it more strict. And then they want the mayor to arrest people and throw them out. Well, the mayor's not going to do that. The mayor's not going to take the police force and have the public thrown out of the public meeting.
Yeah, and in that whole night, well, I should say the whole night, the point where they were in session was very much a tit for tat game, trying to get the administration to say something that they could use then later in the future to against them in a possible lawsuit. Like, it just seemed like they were trying to bait and goat, particularly Amy Demboski in this, and she wasn't biting. She's a very intelligent person, and it was not biting when Forrest had continually, repeatedly asked her a question to bait her into saying that she would not enforce the ordinance. She said she'll enforce the emergency ordinance as written. And I think that's what you do. You enforce it to the letter of the quote law. And this, to me, Suzanne, is just, it's becoming almost untenable the way that things are acting. I mean, for me, this is one of those things. I look at what's going on in Anchorage, and I'm thinking, how can people think this is any good? We have a looming, we're looking at setting forth just went out of my head right now, a budget. Yeah. And instead of getting to business, we're sitting here trying to bait the administration into something that they can use as a lawsuit. We're trying to prevent the public, because we don't like the fact that the public shows up and actually has something to say about what we're doing since they elected us. They don't like that. What they want to do is they want to cut everybody out and just get to what they want to do. And they want everybody to follow their rules regardless. And I think this has long-term ramifications. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. But I mean, in your mind, are you hearing, what's the groundswell to this? I mean, we talked about this where it feels like Anchorage is sort of 50-50. I mean, maybe we've been living in a bubble a little bit, thinking that there's more, the majority does not like what's going on. But I'm starting to feel a little unsettled with the fact that maybe people do want this. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, and then we talked a little bit about this on the Monday podcast, which is we can't just assume that just because we believe that the public has a right to attend meetings, that other people believe that. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who are watching CNN, MSNBC, and who are reading the Anchorage Daily News, and they are being fed daily this dose of fear about a virus that has a 99.5% survivability. I mean, it is a very harsh virus. It's a tough virus, and the medical establishment has done a very poor job of managing it in every way. They're pushing a vaccine, and they're not really working on ways to mitigate symptoms so that people don't have to go to the hospital. The vaccine is obviously not working. It's made a little bit of a dent, but now that virus is doing a workaround. But that's a money trail. To get back to where people are at, people are fearful, and they're accepting this fear mongering from the assembly. They're the seat of their government, from the president, and from the lapdog media.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so in Anchorage, you got to remember this city is turned a little bit blue. Remember, we got rid of all of our oil field jobs, and we brought in all of our medical jobs. All of the Medicaid expansion brought in 10,000 medical workers. Those people vote differently than oil field workers vote, I promise you.
Right.
And
right.
that's where the city changed, and it's been changing since about the Bill Walker era, when he came in and started, the oil patch started to decline under him.
Right.
So really, what's going on here is they ended up canceling that meeting last night. They just gabbled out. They couldn't continue because they passed a mask rule that they couldn't enforce, and they realized they couldn't enforce it. And poor Chris Constant, who's on the assembly, was just throwing a hissy fit. He's gasping for air behind his mask, saying, well, we just need to adjourn. We need to adjourn. Okay, well, we need to continue the meeting to tomorrow. In the meantime, you know that what they're doing is putting together a plan to try to figure out how to enforce this mandate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. And I think, like you said, there's a changing demographic within the working population here in Anchorage, which contributes to this. I do think we've had a little bit of a bubble because we've seen so much turnout for those who definitely disagree with the assembly on numerous factors. And the fact that yesterday they decided to adjourn because they were having a hissy fit, and it wasn't just Christopher Constant, he's just the most vocal and truly probably the chairman of the chair, excuse me, of the
he is the shadow chair. Suzanne LaFrance has got no control over that meeting. It's all Chris Constant whispering in her ear what to do next, what she should do. She just follows along with whatever he tells her.
Yeah, I mean, if she was playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, she would be phoning a friend all the time in this instance. So
absolutely,
it is discouraging. But you did touch on something that I think is relevant, Suzanne, and it is relevant because I've been asking this question, and I don't know if Senator Mike Showers was actually listening to the podcast and decided to throw me a bone. But what I've been harping on for the last couple of days, you've been doing a great job of keeping Must Read Alaska and anybody else who's reading our articles abreast to what the daily count is, and also kind of breaking down. You did a great job yesterday of that for Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember exactly, but you broke down the numbers. And I said, listen, outside of what you're doing, when I see numbers on the ADN or on the television, KTUU or the Alaska News Source, what I'm seeing is just this superficial 36,000 foot level of these numbers, these stats. And what I'm saying is we need more, because I've got a feeling, just based on the fact of the numbers versus those who are vaccinated in Alaska, period, things are not making sense, because the narrative has always been whenever we have new cases, they've got to be unvaccinated, right? That's been the narrative. And so I just said, I'd love to know exactly what's going on with these breakthrough cases. Well, Senator Mike Showers put out a Facebook post that I grabbed, and it's fascinating. So he said this, he was on a Zoom call from the health administrators briefing today. And so today was yesterday. And he said, there's some interesting stats. Now, again, I don't know if he was listening to the show, and if he was, thank you, Senator Showers, but this is some great stats. From that Zoom call, he found out that only 18% of the ICU beds in Alaska are being used by COVID patients. Okay. Now, when you look at ADN, it'll show you 77%. And my question has always been, well, how many of those are actually COVID patients? Well, Senator Showers found out it was 18%. Let's move on. Only 7% of the ventilators available are currently being used by Alaska's hospitals, which means only 7% of them are being used by patients. Doesn't tell you which ones are COVID. And here's the most interesting one. And you did an article, and I've been keeping close track of this. When you wrote your article, you said 16% of all new cases were termed breakthrough cases. And what does that mean for those of you who don't know what breakthrough cases are? Breakthrough cases are cases of those who are fully vaccinated, contracting COVID and having symptoms. Those are breakthrough cases. Those are positive cases. What he found out yesterday is that has increased to 20% of cases are now breakthrough vaccinated people with the Delta variant, as opposed to 4% from the original variant, which is the first one, just the coronavirus. That is an extraordinary amount of, that is a wide gap difference. That's incredible.
Let's talk about it a little bit, because this vaccine doesn't appear to work very well against the Delta variant. And if you look at the charts at the DHSS.alaska.gov website, there's a dashboard there, and that's where I get all the data. I get the state data, which I do believe is incomplete and doesn't always paint the full picture that we need, which you pointed out. And Scott, the number of breakthrough cases, that was from August. But we've got to remember that people did not start getting vaccinated in Alaska until March of 2021.
Right.
That was this year. And so, of course, we're up to 60% that are considered fully vaccinated, age 12 and above. And so we've got a pretty good number. That's 40% not vaccinated, but 60% vaccinated. You would expect that at first you'd have a few breakthrough cases, because your percentage of vaccinated is only going to be 15%, 20%. But now we're up to 60%, and you're going to see more breakthrough cases because you have a higher percentage of vaccinated people. Most of the people in Alaska that can be vaccinated are. So yes, you will see that, and you'll see it go up. In the September report, you'll see it go up to 23. And when the October report comes out, and that probably won't come out until December, you'll probably see a lot of breakthrough, and they'll all be Delta variant. So our knowledge is lagging on this. In other words, we're making decisions for today, and then 2 months from now, we find out, oh my gosh, this Delta variant is not being whipped by this thing, which is why I say the vaccine solution is not the solution. We're going to know that before the year's out, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also, I reported on this a little bit. The lower 48 hospitals now are moving the goalposts in terms of what is considered fully vaccinated. Now, hospitals are saying that if you're not taking a booster shot 6 months after your double shot, you are now considered unvaccinated. So my warning has been simple. I know you and I haven't been on the podcast together during the last couple of days, but my warning simple is that the goalposts will continue to move as far as those who are in charge want to move it. And that is what we're seeing now. Now we're seeing that the double shot, the fully vaccinated status no longer applies in some hospitals down the lower 48, because if you miss a 6-month booster, you're considered now unvaccinated. And the divide continues. You have the unvaccinated and the vaccinated, the wants and the don't wants.
All the goalposts are moving. So I wrote a story this morning about how the city of Bethel, the city council of Bethel, just passed an ordinance that doesn't allow anyone except for meeting officials. In other words, elected officials only may be in city council meetings. And so if you're an elected official or the staff of the elected official, you can be in those meetings, but no member of the public can be in those meetings. Now, 3 years ago, if I had told you that we were going to be in a situation where you were told by the government that you absolutely had to take a medication shot from basically an unproven shot. This thing's not been on the market for but a year. Last year it was just truly experimental. And full disclosure, people, I am vaccinated. I have not only shot number 1, number 2, I've also got the booster shot, because in my age group, it's probably more important than in some people's age group. Let me tell you, if you're a younger person, I'm not trying to give you medical advice, but use your head. Don't just go doing everything that the government tells you to do on this. I did it because that was the best judgment I could make at the time, and I don't regret. But I guess my point is that they're moving the goalposts in meetings. They're moving the goalposts on the vaccine. And, what we're seeing is, the president is moving the goalpost. 3 years ago, I could never have convinced you that you would be forced to take a vaccine to keep a job. I could never have said, hey, Scott, in 3 years, you're not going to believe this. They're not going to let you attend meetings. They're going to shut you out of city council meetings. You would have thought I was absolutely a lunatic if I told you that 3 years ago. But here we are.
And you're absolutely right. Everybody would have thought you were a conspiracy theorist, right?
That's right.
That's what you've been called. And now, again, the conspiracy theorist goalpost has been moved as well. And so I think you're absolutely right. And I think the fear is, and I think what people are starting to become aware of is, oh man, I don't know what's truth in what's just made up, right? I don't know what's truth and I don't know what's made up. And as we continue to move down for crying out loud, the Moderna vaccine is now outlawed in some countries until a certain age because of its ramifications, because we're just learning. We are
several
the experiment.
Countries,
yeah. I mean, 30 years old and older can have it, but anybody under 30 can't take a Moderna vaccine, or some of them are 18. I mean, it's amazing. So there is a lot going on. And again, this goes back to leadership or lack thereof. And I think, when you're looking at it at a federal level, national level, if you will, and even at our state and local level, more specifically, our local level here in Anchorage is what I'm referring to. The leadership here has been awful, at least in my opinion. And that's just my opinion. Everybody can have their own. But as we look at that, one of the things that, and we're going to wrap up with this, one of the things that was really intriguing to watch this week was, how was this recall with Meg Zaletel going to land? Was this going to be the great pushback of the Anchorage dissented, angry, disenfranchised individuals, or was Meg going to cruise by like many saw Felix do during his recall in April? And well, I got to say, this was more of a landslide than Felix's. This was a shellacking. Let me just hear your analysis straight out of the bat. After seeing the results, after seeing everything, what is sort of your analysis on it?
Well, we've seen a trend of recalls, and this has been a fad lately ever since Scott Kendall started the recall campaign against Governor Mike Dunleavy. And they collected a lot of names and they've done a lot of data mining. That was one of their goals, just get a bunch of people that they know hate Mike Dunleavy, and that'll help them out in the next election to get Bill Walker over the line. And so we know that one failed. They just could not complete the signature process. In Anchorage, this year, they tried to recall Felix Rivera off of the assembly. They got the signatures, they got through the court cases, they got it to the ballot, and they failed. And they failed to convince the people of District 4 in Anchorage that Felix Rivera didn't represent them well.
And they were outspent, right? Like 9-1, 8-1.
Yes, it was enormously. The unions came in, poured in a lot of money. It was $75,000, $85,000 to save him. Now, in this one, Meg Zaletel is a equally unattractive assembly member. She's very harsh. She's very she's kind of a nasty person, quite honestly. I mean, sorry, I have to say that on the podcast, but she's not a nice person. Whereas Felix is actually kind of a nice person. But Meg Zaletel, she came by just with blazing colors. So let's take a look at that district. This is the district that Representative Harriet Drummond has represented for over a decade, I think, practically a decade. And this is the district that LV Gray Jackson, Senator Jackson, represents. She also is hard left. She came up through the assembly. And this is the district that Chris Tuck represents. This is a hard left district. It goes from Rogers Park down to Abbott Loop. It goes over to C Street and up to Spenard to Northern Lights Boulevard. And I tell you, this is not a conservative district. So now you have people thinking they're going to recall Jamie Allard out there in Eagle River. Well, let me tell you, good luck.
Yeah. That's if you think the past two recalls were ambitious. They love Jamie out there in Eagle River. They appreciate that she provides and represents Eagle River the way she does. So good luck with that. So yesterday on the podcast, what I did is I gave a 3-part analysis. I gave some what I would consider conclusions, and I want to run them by you because, like I said, you're kind of the orbiter of Alaska history and turning politics, and you know everything. So the first assessment I made of this is this: Anchorage is no longer a red, rose, or even purple city. It is really a light blue to blue city. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would actually. If you let me tell you, if you took out Eagle River from Anchorage proper, you would have Mayor Forrest Dunbar. You know, he won many districts, so he did very well. It was Eagle River that kind of pulled back the vote over to the conservative side. So yes, this is a blue city. And if Eagle River exits, well, I tell you, Forrest Dunbar ought to be the chair of that committee, the Eagle Exit Committee, because if he could get rid of Eagle River, he could become mayor.
Absolutely. Which leads me to my second point, which is Eagle River is the only part of Anchorage municipality, maybe even Chugiak, that is keeping what we're considering any sort of conservatism, both on the assembly and in the seat of mayor. So the Bronson administration, Jamie Allard and Crystal Kennedy, that is because of Eagle River. Correct. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And lastly is this, and it was sort of my last point and also a stark point and somewhat maybe dismaying, is that unless conservatives come out in droves now and actually vote, you are going to continue to see what you have, that regardless if you have a conservative mayor and Eagle River represents with Jamie Allard and Crystal Kennedy's not running again, but I'm assuming they'll put in a conservative assembly person, you are still going to have a left-leaning majority in that assembly.
You will. I think that's a very fair statement that the people up on the hillside in the lower hillside and South Anchorage are getting to be a little bit more liberal. We've got a lot of government workers. We have a lot of university workers, like I mentioned earlier, medical workers. And so as your private sector shrinks and your federal dollars come in, the people who are voting, they definitely have something to defend, which is their federal paycheck.
Right.
or their grant paycheck that comes through the federal government. And we don't have enough military voters in our city. They never vote for in the municipal election. So in spite of the fact that we have a good military community, they don't show up except for presidential elections typically.
Gotcha. So I guess long term is the question is it, my overarching question for you is this: do you think that we have enough conservative voters out there in Anchorage that if they did show up, it would change election results? Or are you thinking that many of them are maligned by the fact that, hey, you have mail-in voting now? I don't really believe in mail-in voting. I want to go to a poll. Or is there an apathy because there's maybe people feel so disenfranchised? I mean, is there an opportunity at some point where because it seems like we have more registered, I'll say Republican, conservative, libertarian voters than we do Democratic or left-leaning voters in the city. And yet we see the turnout always going to the left side, the Democratic side. I'm just wondering what you think of that.
Yeah, when you have a 30% turnout, that is actually a pretty good turnout. But really, we've got a lot of people who just don't pay attention to politics at the local level. I remember when I first moved to Anchorage, I was raised in Juneau, and I never wanted to live in Anchorage until I was older, and I just needed a bigger city to live in. And when I came up to Anchorage, I didn't know who to vote for that first year. I looked at the ballot. It's like, well, I don't know. There's Harriet Drummond. There's somebody else. And who do you vote for? Right. And I can't remember who I voted for because I didn't know enough about them. I just sort of voted for whoever's I didn't do my research because I had just gotten here and I had a lot going on. And that's the way life is for people. There's just a lot going on. And you and I, we do this every day. Most people, they only look at election news the last couple of days before the election is over. And our state is, although we're getting older as a state, our state still is young. And so that's going to trend liberal. Anchorage is still a young city. And so I think we're in a generational change, but we are going, 10 years ago, we had a conservative assembly. I mean, just think of, we had Adam Trombley, we had, Dick Cheney, we had a pretty conservative assembly. And now it's actually just Marxist. So they always go too far. The Marxists always go too far. They always push so much further than people are really willing to go to. And we saw that with the bag ban, where the public was very, very unhappy with that. And so, well, this too shall pass, Scott. They're going to push too far.
Well, I would agree with you. I don't think it's doom and gloom. I think people just need, apathy is really difficult when your life is busy, like you said. So I would agree with you. I think the same thing is happening, and it's a pendulum swing, and eventually this pendulum swings back the other way. So absolutely. Well, Suzanne, this is 100. This is the 100th episode.
Well, I'm pretty excited about that. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on this episode for our 100th episode anniversary. And we said a few weeks ago when we just completed our first year that we're just going to do this again for another year because we're having so much fun. And Scott, I just really have had a great time getting to know you, and listening to your podcast throughout the week is always really fun for me. And thank you so much for being part of the Must Read Alaska team. You're the best.
Well, I appreciate it too. And again, I follow the fearless leader, which is you. And I do feel like I ride the coattails, and it's been great to learn. And really, we do this because we want to provide you with an alternative to a mainstream media leftist narrative that you get on a daily basis. You're inundated with this, and we're just appreciative that we have listeners and readers and supporters that see the value in this, because there is a lot of value in it. You are getting a full scope of what's really going on, not just the left-leaning narrative that you get pushed on a daily basis. And if you want to help us continue to provide this type of content, which we do because we know you want it, you can go to mustreadalaska.com, and at the top right, there's a donation button up there. I want to encourage you. Every little bit helps. It helps us to continue this operation. It's a small operation that has a lot of mighty power into it. Suzanne is a content machine. I'm trying to help out on the podcast side. And we have a great ally with John Quick as well, who's a part of this team, who does a phenomenal job in a lot of different areas that I can't even describe to you because they're so complicated. But the bottom line is this, is that, every bit helps when you donate. So go to mustreadalaska.com, go to the top right, you'll see the donation button up there. And we just want to thank you, all our supporters, listeners, and readers, in doing that. Additionally, if you haven't had a chance, all of our content can be found in a variety of different places. First, obviously, Facebook. We have YouTube, Parler, MeWe, Rumble, Twitter. We have the works there, and they're all under the handle of Must Read Alaska, one word. So if you search that in the search You'll find us. My suggestion, like us, subscribe to us, follow us, the works. You're getting all that content there, so you can never miss a beat, because Suzanne is pumping out stories, because we got a lot going on in this state. So again, I want to thank everybody. Suzanne, I appreciate you doing this with me.
We'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Take care, Alaska.